Chapter 5. The Ship. We didn't talk much as we traveled, mostly listening to gossip and chatter of others in the caravan. Occasionally someone would throw an odd glance our way, or ask if Keenan was really a paladin. We tried to discuss the halflings, their role for the king, how that arrangement worked, but interruptions kept breaking our focus. As the city drew near, the weight of the previous day settled over us again. Franklin dying outside his shop, the fight in front of the council hall, Kara saving those children, and the sheer size of the demons we'd faced. We glanced at each other, both thinking the same thing, wondering if things could ever return to normal. At the western gate, a child darted out of the shadows and approached us. He was maybe 10 or 11, thin-faced and smudged with dirt. His blue eyes scanned the street with sharp, restless energy. His hair was a tousled mess, uneven, like it had been cut with a dull blade. It might once have been light brown or blonde. His clothes were patched and mismatched, the fabric worn thin and riddled with stains. Yet despite the rough exterior, he carried himself with defiant confidence. Beneath it flickered a spark of curiosity, a yearning for adventure, something exciting. I smiled. "Hello, Philip." Philip was the leader of Grissom's orphaned and street children. I'd befriended him a few years ago, right after Keenan had left. With Gamriel's help, we built a network to give those kids a sense of family, something to anchor them and keep them out of trouble. Though I suspected my uncle also used them to keep tabs on the city's undercurrents. Philip stood there trying to look cool, glancing around like he had something important to share. I chuckled to myself. This kid cracks me up, but I was glad he was staying out of trouble. Once he was sure no one was listening, he leaned in and asked, "Is he safe?" nodding towards Keenan. Keenan suppressed a smile while I leaned in, answering seriously, "Yeah, he's okay." Philip studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, if you say he's all right, then he's all right with me." Trying not to laugh, I replied, "Don't worry. If he goes sideways, I'll let you know." Satisfied, Philip continued, "It's been crazy here since some of the guards switched sides and those red-eyed men attacked the other day." I nodded. "Are all you guys okay?" "Yeah," he said. "I made sure we got to our safe houses. We even found this new place in the sewers, but we can talk about that later." Philip paused, glancing around nonchalantly before adding, "Your uncle wants to talk to you. That ship they came in on, it's messing with people. Some say they're hearing voices. Most can't even get close without freaking out and running off." I glanced at Keenan, who was listening closely. "All right. Thanks for the heads up, Philip. Do you know where my uncle is now?" "He was headed home, but he might stop by the blacksmith shop," Philip replied. "Why would he stop there?" I asked. "Oh, didn't you hear?" Philip's expression turned somber. "Franklin was killed by those red-eyed devils. Thram's filling in until they find a replacement." Keenan and I exchanged a look, the reality of Franklin's death returning. He'd been a quiet but steady presence in the community, not one for many words, but his absence would be deeply felt. As was our custom, I pulled a couple coins from my pouch and discreetly handed them to Philip. He slipped them into his bag without missing a beat. "If you need anything, I'll be around," he said. Then he headed back into the city, vanishing into the crowd. "That kid's something else, but he's a good one," Keenan smiled. "He remind you of anyone?" I laughed. "Yeah, too much. Hopefully we helped this one turn out better than you did." Keenan smirked. "One can only hope." We stopped by the blacksmith's, where Thram was finishing up work on the guard's armor. He told us Gam had headed home, so we made our way there. When we arrived, Gam greeted us at the door. "Oh, good, you're here. I was just about to head down to the ship to check it out. We'll grab Thram on the way." "What about Grog?" I asked. Gam shook his head. "He wouldn't be much help, unless we need someone to chop the boat into kindling. Which might come later. For now, I want more information." He grabbed a few items from a chest, and we headed back towards the blacksmith's. After picking up Thram, we made our way to the dockyard. The dockyard sprawled along the edge of a wide, murky harbor, where the salty tang of seawater mingled with the earthy scent of wet wood and fish. Weathered piers jutted into the water, their beams slick and darkened with brine and algae. Ropes and rigging hung in tangled webs along the posts, some frayed from years of use. Masts rose like skeletal fingers from the moored ships, and the rhythmic creak of timber mixed with sailors' shouts and the distant squawk of gulls flying overhead. Lining the shore, warehouses and workshops stood in uneven rows, their stone foundations and timber frames worn by years of salt-laden wind. Open doors revealed busy workers stacking crates or mending nets. Dockhands hauled heavy sacks of grain and rolled barrels up gangplanks, while merchants haggled and scribes scratched notes into ledgers. Fishermen unloaded their catches, calling out to passerby with the day's offerings. We made our way toward the largest pier, where a ship with 2 masts and black sails loomed into view. It sat along at the end of the dock, an eerie, unnatural presence. Nothing, no gulls, no dockhands, not even rats ventured near it. At the edge where the dock met the road, 2 town guards stood uneasily as we approached. Gam greeted them. "Has anyone tried to board the ship?" "No, sir," one guard answered. "Not that anyone would want to. Just getting close makes you feel like you need to run. There's something wrong with it." As they spoke, I studied the ship. The wood itself seemed to seep a dark, oily blackness that defied logic. It radiated danger and decay. Even from this distance, the smell of rot was sharp and oppressive. And yet, despite the revulsion curling in my gut, I felt myself drawn to it. An invisible pull, as though something deep inside wanted me closer. My instinct screamed at me to run. I shook myself out of it and glanced at Keenan. He was staring too, unmoving. We both blinked, snapping out of the trance at the same time, only then realizing how quiet it had become. Gam, Throm, and the guards were watching us. "Well?" Gam asked. "Yes," I said, confused. "You've been staring at the ship for 5 minutes. You didn't hear a word I said," Gam replied, concern etched across his face. Keenan and I exchanged uneasy glances, unsettled by what had just happened. Gam's expression turned grim. "I need you two to deliver a message to someone who might be able to help us." Keenan frowned. "Shouldn't we at least try to board it first?" In response, Gam picked up a rock and hurled it towards the ship. It struck something midair, an invisible barrier, and dropped into the water with a soft splash. "Oh," Keenan muttered, clearly feeling a bit foolish. Throm chuckled. Gam shrugged. "Don't worry. If this contact of mine can't help, then we'll revisit the chop it into pieces plan." He turned back to the guards. "Keep rotating shifts, no more than 2 hours per group per day." "No argument from us," one of them replied quickly, nodding in agreement. As we walked away from the docks, Throm explained that the magic surrounding the ship was beyond his ability to handle, even as a paladin, but hopefully Gam's contact would be able to help. "Although," Gam muttered under his breath, "I just hope the little bugger will cooperate." We arrived at the stables, and I raised an eyebrow. "He's not in town?" Gam smiled. "Nope. And this could be dangerous, but I need you to reach him as soon as possible." "Well, who is it?" Keenan asked, curiosity piqued. Gam laid out a sigh. "His name is Reggie." Keenan and I exchanged stunned glances. "You mean the one at the Mage Tower?" I blurted. Throm and Gam shared surprised looks. "How do you know about him?" Gam asked. We quickly shared the little we knew, carefully sidestepping anything that tied back to the king's family from earlier that morning. Gam's eyes narrowed, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but he let it slide, for now. Instead, he handed me a sealed letter. "Follow the road. When you get there, just call out his name, and for your own sake, try not to be out after dark. It doesn't always end well." With that, 2 horses were led out of the stables. They were northern mustangs from the rolling hills. Keenan's mount, Ember, was a red roan, rusty red with a dusting of white spots across her coat. Mine was Storm, a striking dapple gray with a white blaze down his nose. "How will we know when we're there?" I asked, glancing south towards the unfamiliar road ahead. Gam chuckled. "Oh, you'll know." Before we could ask anything else, he and Throm turned and walked off, leaving us standing there exchanging uncertain looks. Keenan shook his head. "If I didn't know better, I'd think he was trying to get us killed in the Badlands." I laughed. "Yeah, same. Either way, we'd better get moving if we want to get there before dark." We set off at a steady pace, the wasteland stretching endlessly before us. It was a desolate expanse devoid of life. The ground was a patchwork of cracked earth and ashen dust, broken only by jagged rocks and the occasional tuft of withered grass. Scattered across the barren landscape were remnants of old stone and wooden structures, once sturdy, now crumbling into decay. Blackened stone walls leaned precariously, riddled with cracks and choked by dying vegetation. Splintered beams jutted at odd angles, their surfaces bleached by years of exposure. The air was dry and heavy, carrying the faint scent of rot. A persistent eerie silence hung over the land, broken only by the groan of a collapsing beam or the soft whisper of wind stirring the dust. This was a place where decay marched steadily forward, swallowing the last traces of a once thriving world. We rode quietly, eyes scanning the horizon, hoping we wouldn't run into anything. I glanced at Keenan. He was watching a half-collapsed structure near the road, its roof long since caved in. Great place for an ambush, I said, nodding toward it. Keenan kept his eyes on the ruins. If this road saw more traffic, I'd probably be more nervous. Still, even with paladin training, numbers and surprise can kill you. Thanks, Captain Sunshine, I said with a chuckle. With that kind of optimism, how could we possibly lose? Keenan smiled. I'd love to take a contingent of paladins out here like in the old days and just clear it all out. There can't be much left out here that could stand against a unit of trained paladins. Maybe, I said, shaking my head. But I remember my uncles talking about how they used to send raids into the wastes. Then one day they just stopped. Never said why. I don't think they were afraid exactly, but they were concerned. Keenan said thoughtfully. Interesting. We rode on, the strain of constant alertness making the hours stretch longer than they were. The landscape remained bleak, and the silence pressed in like a weight. Eventually we reached the end of the road, only to find nothing. We stopped and dismounted. Our horses shifted uneasily, ears pricked, eyes scanning the horizon with nervous energy. Dust swirled around the hooves as we exchanged puzzled looks. Is this it? I asked, scanning the empty surroundings. Keenan looked just as confused. Your uncle said to call out, so I guess hello? Nothing. The silence deepened. Wait, I said, try his name. Oh, right, Keenan cleared his throat, then called out, Reggie? A sudden thunderclap echoed across the wasteland, and before us appeared a towering figure. A massive man, easily 10 feet tall. He stood like a living monolith of muscle and menace. His shoulders stretched impossibly wide, his chest rising and falling with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a predator watching his prey. Every inch of him was corded with sinew strength, his thick arms like tree trunks carved from stone. His face was a chiseled mask of intimidation, deep-set eyes burning with cold, calculating intensity. His battered dark armor bore the scars of countless battles, and at his side hung a colossal weapon, its dulled blade no less threatening in his grip. An aura of menace clung to him, thick and suffocating, enough to make even the bravest hesitate. When he spoke, his voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very air. Why are you here? For a moment we were too stunned to respond. Then I remembered the letter. I held it up. I have a message for Rezi, from Gamriel in Grissom City. The giant said nothing, staring at us like he could see straight into our souls. I glanced at Keenan and shrugged. Can you take us to him? This is urgent. People are dying. Still no response. Frustration welled up in me, but before I could press further, Keenan stepped forward. I am Aegis, protector of the innocent, wielder of the bulwark of kings, he declared, sweeping off his travel cloak to reveal the king's armor beneath. We are friends of King Brahm. He gave me this armor as a brother and as a friend. The man's voice grew lower, rougher, cracking like dry stone. Did you kill him to get it, Noctari? Your kind are always scheming, but it won't work on me. The sting of those words hit Keenan hard. I saw it in his eyes, but he held firm, steady. The two locked eyes for what felt like minutes. Then unexpectedly, the giant laughed, a deep, unsettling sound that rolled through the dust like thunder. Well, I'll be. The king says you're all right. Wait, how did he? I started, but before I could finish, a flash of light engulfed the massive figure, and just like that, he vanished. Before we could react, a blur of movement erupted beside us, a small, hyperactive gnome bursting into the scene like a wind-up toy with no off switch. He stood just under 3 feet tall, his wiry frame barely containing his boundless energy. Wide, luminescent green eyes darting in every direction with manic curiosity. Unkempt green hair spiked wildly from his head, and even his skin seemed to carry a faint green tinge. His patchwork clothes looked like they'd been sewn together from every fabric known to man, and his vest was a chaotic masterpiece of tiny pockets, each one stuffed with trinkets, vials, tools, and shinies, odds and ends. He started speaking so fast it was hard to keep up. So you helped the king, huh? Good, great. He grinned like he hadn't slept in days and didn't need to. How's his daughter doing? I'm sure she's great. Yep, gotta be great. I trained her. But don't tell anyone. Since you've got the armor and you said you're alright, you probably already know, don't you? Yep, she's something special, different. He glanced up at us and sighed. Too fast, huh? Okay, slowing down. I always forget how fast us gnomes talk when we get excited. He paused, then nodded to himself, realizing he started speeding up again. Keenan and I exchanged lost looks as the gnome made a visible effort to slow his speech. She's gotta be great, he said more deliberately. Knew she could do it. Portaled you from Grissom to Burke, huh? Hot coals, that's impressive. Told her it was easy, just needed the right push. He paused just long enough to take a breath before barreling ahead again. So, what's going on in Grissom? I sent some nasty portals over there. Bad news, yep. You're not hiding a mage, are you? He squinted at us, his piercing gaze darting back and forth like a lie detector on overdrive. Before we could answer, he waved his hand dismissively. No, I'd have known that. Figured it out already. No mage. But bad, or not good, definitely. I opened my mouth to respond, but he cut me off with a raised finger. Yes, the letter. But first, how about we get indoors, Not safe out here at night. Come on, you two. He turned and gave Keenan a long, amused look, tilting his head. A Noctari paladin, huh? Who would have thought? Ha! Without another word, he spun around and strode off with purpose. Keenan and I exchanged bewildered glances before shrugging and following him, our horses close behind. The wasteland fell away the moment we crossed an unseen threshold. Before us unfolded an oasis, hidden deep within the desert's heart, veiled by illusion. Lush and almost otherworldly, it stood in stark contrast to the desolation we'd left behind. At its center shimmered a crystal-clear pool, its surface rippling gently as a breeze carried the scent of fresh greenery. Reeds and cattails lined the water's edge, swaying in the quiet harmony with the wind. Clusters of date palms and acacias circled the pool, their leafy canopies casting cool shade across the vibrant ground. Bright wildflowers speckled the earth, and their vivid colors a bold contrast to the muted hues of the desert beyond. Rising above it all stood a sturdy stone tower, its weathered facade scarred by countless sandstorms. Ivy crept up to its base, a sign of nature reclaiming its place. Narrow windows caught the sunlight, glinting faintly, as if watched by unseen eyes. From its height, the entire oasis could be surveyed, serene waters, winding paths, and dense foliage forming a haven where peace and vigilance coexisted, sanctuary and sentry in equal measure. Reggie smiled. You can release the horses. They'll be safe here. He turned to us, still grinning. Well, what do you think? I come out here sometimes to garden. Some of the others do too. Not bad, huh? We let the horses go, watching them trot towards the shade, clearly at ease. Keenan nodded, smiling. This place is incredible. You've done an excellent job hiding it. The little gnome beamed with pride, then turned and made his way towards the tower. We followed as Reggie rambled on, pointing out various plants and explaining their uses. Most of it went over our heads, his words tumbling out in rapid, scattered stream. Eventually we reached a large door at the tower base. He opened it, and we stepped inside. The entryway was narrow, with a stone staircase spiraling upward along the outer wall. At the far end stood a slender door set flush into the stone, barely noticeable at first. Reggie walked straight to it, paused, and muttered something under his breath. The door shimmered, its surface shifting from a dull red to a luminous blue. Keenan and I exchanged startled glances. Reggie just grinned. Lots of doors to lots of places, he said, patting the frame. Short legs hate long walks, so no hallways. We use a door storage device. I call it a walk knot, but the other mages call it the arcane archway. He paused, then added, still waiting for a better name. If you think of one, let me know. With that, he opened the door and stepped through, into a space far larger than the tower should have allowed. It was a massive study. The hearth, built from dark stone, etched with faintly glowing runes, radiated a warm, steady heat. Above it, a mantel held many curious artifacts, a crystalline orb, small jars of shimmering powder, and trinkets whose purpose we could only guess. Towering bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with ancient tomes and brittle scrolls. Some were bound in cracked leather with strange lettering, others wrapped in threadbare cloth. Between them nestled gleaming vials, oddly shaped stones, and jars of black ink cradling feathered quills. A large oak desk dominated the center of the room, its surface scattered with parchment, open books, and half-melted candles. An ornate inkpot and raven feather quill suggested recent use, while a stack of neatly written notes hinted at the gnome's latest project. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper, burning wood, and something stranger, an almost metallic tang that hinted at recent magical experiments. Shadows danced across the ceiling as the fire flickered, casting the whole room in a warm golden glow. It was cozy, chaotic, and full of boundless discovery. Well, the gnome asked, looking at us expectantly. What? I replied, confused. Keenan shook his head and silently mouthed, the letter? Oh, right. I fumbled to pull it out from my pack and handed it over to Reggie, as Reggie tapped his foot with theatrical impatience. Keenan chuckled as I passed it along. While Reggie read, his eyes darted across the page. Keenan's attention drifted to a small, curious-looking bag on the desk. He stepped closer, intrigued, but stopped himself from touching it. Probably wise. Not everything in a wizard's study was meant to be handled. Reggie finished reading and grinned. Interesting. Haven't had a mystery like this in years. Could be fun. Or, his eyes flicked to Keenan, could be an old mage's practical joke. What? Keenan asked, puzzled. Reggie pointed to the bag. That. Draws you in. Makes you want to open it. He picked it up, turning it over in his hand. Pops out random potions. Might turn you into a frog. Might make you fall in love with a dwarf. Who knows? He casually tossed it back on the desk. But this, he continued, tapping the letter. This ship, possessed crew, possessed hull? No, can't be. Maybe a spell? But something more? Could it be one of the three? Bound to it, maybe. No, too old. Too evil. Unless... He drifted into silence, muttering to himself, eyes unfocused. Keenan and I exchanged glances, waiting. After a long pause, Reggie suddenly looked up and blinked, as if seeing us for the first time. Oh, you're still here. You should go home. I'll help with the ship in the morning. Need to study first. Figure out what we're dealing with. Takes time. He paused, then added, Oh, pocket dimension. Forgot to mention. That's why the room's so big. I glanced around, finally realizing just how impossibly vast the study was. Thanks. Reggie waved a hand dismissively. Well, you asked, so I'm answering. Now off you go. I've got research to do, and you two are too noisy. Although, he squinted at us, head tilted, there's something about you. Something old. He sniffed his own armpit. Or maybe I haven't bathed this year. He wandered off mid-thought, mumbling to himself. I looked at Keenan, shrugged, and mouthed, Okay. We turned towards the door. Just as I reached for the handle, Reggie called out, Wait, what are you doing? We froze. You're crazy. You could die out there at night. Wild animals, rampaging Noctari, and worse, he squinted, other, smaller animals. Not safe. Hang on. He grinned and snapped his fingers. I blinked and suddenly I was standing outside Grog's Inn. The night was quiet, the streets mostly empty. I glanced around disoriented, and realized Keenan was nowhere in sight. A commotion echoed down the street. Hand instinctively on my weapon, I jogged towards the noise. It led me to the bathhouses, where I arrived just in time to see Keenan being shoved out of the women's bathhouse by a furious housekeeper. His face was even redder than usual as he apologized repeatedly, dodging swats from her broom. I couldn't help but laugh as he finally escaped and walked over to me, flustered. Wait till I see Reggie again, he muttered. I shook my head, still grinning. Oh, Keenan, only you. At least it was empty, he said with a sigh. That could have been really bad. We both laughed as we headed home, still trying to make sense of the day, and what was easily one of the strangest encounters of our lives.